We're now going to continue with our presentations. Take a look at another presentation, but something I'd like to give you as an example. So suppose that I have two programmers, Alice and Bob. Okay, so here's Alice right here, and Alice writes classes, right? So Alice writes code and implements different classes in the application. And here's Bob, and Bob also writes his own, classes in the application. And so they write a lot of code. Now, these um, these classes could actually belong to different components in the application, right? So they could belong to different packages. It's not very difficult to create new package and add classes to it. So perhaps this is some kind of a business layer with business objects, and this is user interface layer with classes responsible for user interface. But how can we best provide an interaction between these seemingly two different parts of the application and even written by different people? More so, these classes and these classes could be written at different times so that Alice and Bob don't have a chance to talk to one another to reconcile anything. Is there anything that can be done to essentially create a standard to an approach of writing a lot of code and yet have some predictable expectations that it should be quite easy for Alice to write code to make a call into a class that is being implemented by Bob, right? So this kind of issue, basically a design issue, and the workflow, I consider it to be very significant because it happens just all the time. So how do you create an internal standard that forces you to do things right so that no one has to struggle because someone else like Chad comes tomorrow, is hired, and now can use both of these components written by different people and still be completely okay? What's the key? What's the answer to this type of challenge? And so this is going to be our next topic of our conversation. We're going to talk about interfaces. Okay, so interfaces are simply abstract classes with all methods in them abstract, with no data attributes in them except static final attributes. And so they are simply playing the role of a contract that everyone says we will obey this contract to write our software. So we can actually demonstrate this in our code, but I'll wait for something more reasonable than just this, this empty, printable. So here, perhaps we could use printable with just one method. Printable interface is designed for any class that wants to provide a print method. Okay, for instance, we can take this interface, right? We can take this interface and add it to our own project. So let's perhaps run this quick demonstration. All right, so here's my project. I go to my package and I add new Java interface, right? New Java interface and printable. Printable is the new interface. So here we go. You still have to specify which package this belongs to, right? So this is no longer a class. This is an interface. And interface is very similar and absolutely similar to a class, except that it has a lot of restrictions, right? So those restrictions are that if I wanted to add string printer ID to this interface, I couldn't do it right? Because interface cannot have, unlike class, cannot have variables. Okay. However, I could try something like this. I could try a default printer printer ID and say, you know, I may even try initialize it to some silly value like K104 printer, right? If there is a printer with this name on the network, right? So I can add something that looks like a static attribute, and inherently it is made final inside the interface. So you don't have to say final and static. You can basically abbreviate this, and when you create an interface, if you add a variable which has to be initialized because it's final static. Final means constant, therefore it can only be initialized, but it cannot be redefined or changed, right? And likewise, if you add a method named print, right? Then this specific method cannot have implementation because no executable code may be placed inside the interface, number one. And number two, it's also is by default public, right? So I can say public void print, but it's not. I mean, it's not required because by default it's public, right? So this shortens the interface that you write inside Java interface, and as you can see, this is what's available. So you can say only. You probably wouldn't write this type of comment in your own code, but I'll just say it here that only static constant data members, right? And then only abstract public methods. And abstract methods imply that there is no implementation. That's what makes method abstract. So once again, I could have said explicitly abstract public void print, but I don't have to because this is an overkill. It's expected by the interface that every method that you define will be of that kind. Okay, so let's save this. And so how can I take advantage, as we said that maybe there should be some type of agreement between, you know, one piece of the system, one component, another component. We can program against interfaces. So for example, let's just go maybe take a look at our main method here and come up with the demonstration where printable would be useful. So for instance, instead of using full description here as an example, maybe I wanted to say print, right? Maybe I wanted to say print, and knowing that that each product here implements printable, I can change this code to say printable. Okay, and so of course this environment becomes unhappy quickly because none of the book, video game, or video game class implement the print interface. But I could make this happen by going to my book class right here, right? And saying that, yes, it extends product, but it also implements the printable interface. And therefore, if I do implement printable interface, of course, I do need to say override, in this case, I need to say public, right? Because we're working with the regular class, public void print, right? Public void print, and naturally, my implementation of print will be just to call something like system.out.print, right? Print and call full description to do this full description, right? So that would be my implementation of a print here. And likewise, if I want my product class also to support printable interface and to implement printable interface, I can then locate my video game, right? That was another one, and just do the same thing, override print, and look how override suggests that there is nothing to override that looks like print. So you need to go here, and of course you need to say implements printable. And of course, as we run out of space, we can do this on the next line, something like that. Right? Similarly here, we can just say extends and implements printable, and essentially format it slightly differently, and then say source format and see what the suggested format is. But it's up to you how you format it. But this and when of course when I say full description, this is a method call, so it needs parentheses. So that's my syntax error there. But this is how I can say that both video game and the book class actually participate in support of the printable interface. In other words, implement printable interface. So let's go back to main and see what happens here. We say in every product, right? In every product here, in products, we can say print. And of course, this was good for full description. Print needs only this, I believe, right? Print only needs this. But what I need to change now is that instead of going through the collection of products as instances of a product class, instead I can change this to printable, right? If I made this printable, then printable, all products here are printable, and therefore it should work. So let me run this very quickly, right? And so there is no longer a new line inserted at all, right? So I can basically add the print new line separately, because now it just this has to be system.out.print line, right, so that I can print those things on a separate line. But this is the look and feel of an interface. So the idea is that, once again, similarly to using superclass inside of our collection or standalone, just a singular variable, we can use interfaces as long as the objects that we do insert in our collections or use individually or pass by parameters say implement this particular interface. Okay, so this is a demo where it still works with some tweaks, and this still works. So let's